I'll go ahead and do this somewhat professional. Today is May 13th, 1995. We're sitting in the Whitehead homestead with William and Mary Whitehead. This is a video history interview to document, I don't know, their lives, our family, for future generations, for posterity. And we're going to try to keep this as informal as possible, since I don't know what I'm doing. First of all, I want to start with, I want you to tell me how you two met. Where, when, what were the circumstances? Either one of you can start. And
Okay,
just jump
you
in.
start, Dad.
Well, we met in February of 1948. Mary was working at the YMCA in Dubuque, Iowa, and I think she was at the desk
Yep.
one day when I came in, and that's how we met.
You came in, you were checking in, or?
I was living there during the summer months of the year that I had enrolled at Loyola Law School in Chicago and staying at the Y.
So you're just home for the summer from school?
Home from the summer, for the summer, yeah.
Well-
From Loras College.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Tell them where you were working, Dad.
I was working at Carr Adams and Collier.
What was that?
That was a plant where they make sashes for windows, and they also made doors and that sort of thing.
Oh.
And I was a flunky. I was a what they called a helper.
Okay.
The guy would saw the boards, and I would pick them up and stack them on the carts. And one time I ran over my toe with a cart and broke my toe. But it was an interesting summer.
Now, how old were you then?
I was 21. Was I?
No.
22.
Yeah, because I was 24.
Yeah, I was 22.
He was 22.
Okay. So you were working at the Y. How long had you been working at the Y?
I came to work at the Y when I was 22, so I had been there about 2 years. And Dad was so cute, and I thought he was about 16. So I didn't, I thought, well, this is nice, but you were wearing your hair in a flat top then, weren't you?
I think so.
Seemed to me, and it was really, really blonde, and he had ruddy cheeks, and I thought, yeah, he's a really cute kid. And of course,
So how did it, when I ask you how you meet, I understand the circumstances. I guess you were working there and you were going to be living there, but how did you ask Mom out? Did you say you want to go to dinner, or?
Well, I think at first I started walking you home, didn't I?
yeah, and they have a group for young adults?
Yeah, Teen Haven.
No, that was for teenagers.
Well, we were
But
old.
they had organized a group for older people. Don't you know, Rita was there, and Rita was mad because she said, why should I get an eligible Catholic boy,
Who
and
was Rita?
Rita Harling, Rita Welch
at that
was
time.
her name.
Mhm.
So there was a group, and I can't remember much about it. It didn't last very long, but they were young people our age, and it was very convivial. It was nice.
So you both went, like just a big group that you hang out together, or was?
Yeah, we sort of did. Remember, we used to wind up down at the Davenport Club in the basement of the the Dubuque Club down in the basement.
And she would be drunk on
Half
one
a beer.
A cheap date.
He
Oh,
said I was the cheapest date he ever
The
had.
other thing, they always carded us because we looked so young.
Yeah. They carded us till we were 30 years old.
Yeah.
The drinking age was 18 then, wasn't it?
No, 20.
21 at that
21.
It was
time.
21.
Yeah.
So you met. You saw each other. Was this love at first sight, or?
I think so. For me, it was.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I thought he was about 16. And because I guess they'd had to have been 18 to have stayed there, but he looked very, very young. And, but yeah, he was really
When
nice.
did you finally figure out how old he was?
I guess I asked you. I don't know.
Yes.
But you know, he is 2 years younger than I am. But of course, we both look young, and but it was really nice. It was I went to this group because that was part of my job. See, I worked on the desk half days, then I ran Teen Haven, the other half, and then whenever any new organization started, well, then we all were supposed to pitch in. Just like down at the library, you know, everybody pitches in and tries to get things going.
So all these little organization things were run through the Y.
That's right,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So you started walking her home. You just asked if you could walk her home. I mean, how does something like that? What I'm trying to get the whole, you know,
Yeah.
how did it go from just being acquaintances to even dating and?
Gosh, I
It
don't know.
you know, kind of
Maybe we were both
automatic.
desperate.
Could be.
Well, it was really interesting because, for me, because now this goes on a little farther, because we got to talking about religion and
And you were Catholic, but you were Methodist.
I was a Methodist, yeah, and we took long walks. Remember, we used to walk. Of course, I don't think you had a car down there except when you got to borrow Dad's, did you?
No, I didn't.
And I didn't have a car. And but anyway, I had always had problems. The young men and the older men that I liked had to be people who wanted to talk about things, you know, who were interested. It wasn't just you didn't just date and party and all that kind of stuff. And so of course that meant that there were a lot of guys that had no interest in me at all because I talked too much.
No comment from Dad on that. I don't know why I even asked this,
Yeah.
but was it odd, even back then, for an older woman to be dating a younger man? Was that awkward or?
My generation it was, but see, we didn't grow up together. But I remember when I was in high school, there was a senior girl going with a sophomore guy. And that would have been in the, 40, 41. And we just all, you know, oh, isn't that crazy? Isn't that weird? And, you know, 2 years is nothing. But I don't know how it was. Did you ever date an older woman?
No, but the other thing is, I had been in service for 2.5 years, and so, you know, I was not just a kid out of high school.
Right.
And whether that, I probably looked younger than I felt.
Yeah, yeah. Because that was, you know, Dad went over, did you go overseas when you were 18 or just into the service?
19.
When he was 19 and never really been away from Dyersville. And that would have been hard for someone like me who my whole life, you know, had roamed from one place to another, but I was always with my parents or with friends. So.
Okay, so now you're kind of dating, I guess. How does it go from dating to being engaged to get married? How long a process? How long of a courtship
When did we
you have?
decide to get married?
I think we'd gone together about 3 months. This is not.
You were desperate.
This is not the way. This is not a marriage film to
No,
tell people.
We're not counseling
No,
marriage.
no, we're not counseling doing that. But just, yeah, go
Well, I
on.
was just going to say that I was, you know, I had taken a test to get into law school, and I had passed. So I was going to be going to school in the fall, and I don't think we wanted to be apart. So
Well, we had
that's
talked.
probably why we decided to get married in September.
It was because we were going to get married at Christmas time or around the first of the year when he would have time off. And then he said, well, that's not going to work because I'll come home every weekend because I'll miss you, you know. So that's why we got married before he.
How did you ask Mom to marry you? Do you remember? Where were you when it happened?
I don't know. I think we were in my dad's car.
That could have been. That was some car.
Well, the year was 1948, and it was a 1933 Chevy. But
It
was
got
a
us
good car.
there.
It served the purpose.
We were going from Dubuque to Dyersville on a gravel road, and all of a sudden there was this terrible sound. And so Dad stopped the car and got out, and it was
Muffler.
the muffler had fallen down. So I had a belt, and I took the belt off, and we tied the muffler up until he got to Dyersville. But you know, that was not unusual in our day.
Oh no,
You had a car and you ran it forever.
well, you got a lot of flat tires in those
Oh,
days.
yes, yes.
But
You never went anywhere that you didn't expect to have a flat.
well, and you never drove over 35 miles an hour.
But anyway,
So you think you were in your dad's car, and were you, how, do you remember if you were nervous? Were you, I mean, what did you'd only been dating 3 months. That's not a long time before you got
I don't
married.
think I was nervous. I don't know about you.
I can't remember you ever exactly asking me. I think we just assumed. But I do know that I thought September was a little early.
And her mother would be there with a baseball bat.
That's what she. It was really funny because I think she said that, didn't she?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because see, I would come in late. Now you've got to understand, I was 24 and soon to be 25,
You were living at home.
but I was living at home, and I frankly didn't think it was any of Mom's business when I came in.
Well, see, the worst thing was I was a Catholic.
Yeah, that was
And,
very
and
hard.
Mom did not appreciate Catholics.
And well, you know, it's just like so many things. Even now, it's how you were raised and where you grew up. And she grew up in a little town where there were two Catholic families, neither one of which she cared much for. And there was no Catholic church there. And it was just, that was the Bible Belt sort of thing, you know. And
So you had that going against you.
yeah,
How much of an influence did Mom have over your decision? Obviously not a lot.
no. And but she, about 5 years after we were married, she came and told me that I was right and she was wrong. So, see?
Catholics ain't too bad.
Yeah, well, basically, she, you know,
Well, see, the other thing was she decided to become a Catholic. And that was even, she had even been mulling this around before we decided to get married.
yeah.
Is that right?
I think I was exploring, and having gone to the RCIA classes, you know, I think that I was right, but I didn't know it intellectually. I knew it instinctively, that I had not been, that I was searching for something more than what I had. And of course, your parents are always concerned that you are going to have a chance at happiness. And, you know, when you change religions or whatever, or move far, far away. And then, of course, we were going in, had what, probably between us $1,000 maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, and we're going into Chicago and lived with a family. We had a room, shared a bath, and that just, my mother just thought, this is not going to work. This is just terrible, you know. But
So this is now when you got to Chicago, right?
Yeah.
That you were, now, I want to step back just for a second.
Mhm.
So you get married in Dubuque in September.
at Sacred Heart Church.
Sacred Heart Church.
Well, I asked Father Kenny, who married us, Father Kenny Lucan, who I went to school with, was at St.
Sacred Heart.
And I asked him if he thought she should go on with her instructions before we were married or wait until after. And he said, by all means, do it first. And so that's
Yeah.
what she did.
Yeah.
I know it used to be more, I mean, it's still kind of a problem, but a problem for non-Catholics to get married to a Catholic is, I mean, some priests had problems with that, didn't they?
Well, if I had not converted, then we would have been married in the rectory.
We couldn't have been
Would've
married
been
in a mass.
You can't be married. And now, of course, you can be married and it isn't a mass, but it's in the church. So, Father Ken, gave me my instructions. And he was a good pick because he was into theater. So he and I spent X number of minutes talking about theology and the rest of the time talking about theater. But
Now I know you got married at a children's mass, right?
8 o'clock in the morning.
yeah,
On
on a Thursday.
Thursday. How did that come about? How did you decide then? Was it just timing? I mean, that you had to.
Because
We wanted an early wedding because we didn't have much time. It was on the 2nd of September, and I had to report at school on the 8th. So we didn't have much time. So we were married at 8, had a breakfast, and took off at noon
Took off a noon for your
for a honeymoon.
yeah,
Mhm.
what did we 2 or 3 day honeymoon we had.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And where was that?
Oh, very far. We went to Ames and Iowa City.
And Iowa City, nothing was open because the school term hadn't started. We ate in a greasy spoon. The food was terrible, remember?
Yeah.
And then we left there and went up to Iowa State and stopped just for, it was someone that you had known through
We
Bill.
we stopped at Father Weber's rectory.
I forgot that.
And,
that was on the way.
Did we stop somewhere else?
Yes, one time you and Bill.
Yes, we stopped at a professor's house in Ames.
Yeah.
Bill Yeager, a friend of mine, had stayed there while he was going to Iowa State. And I had met them one summer when Bill Yeager and I went for a visit to Iowa State. And so we stopped to see them while we were there.
And she was in we did call. We didn't just stop in, but she had little children, and I think her dishwasher wasn't working. And of course, she remembered Dad, but it wasn't like it was Bill.
We weren't old friends.
No,
We were just
yeah.
acquaintances.
Yeah.
How did you pick Ames for a place to go for your honeymoon?
We
Well,
had
we
this.
liked Ames.
Well,
Had
when
you
we
been there before?
Oh yeah, my Uncle John graduated from
Oh, sure, yeah.
college there. Yeah.
well, and we had this old car of Dad's. I mean, we
Could only go so far.
You took your dad's car.
yeah.
Did the muffler fall off during this trip
Nope.
at all?
Nope.
No, the car acted very well.
Yes,
during
it
the trip.
did.
So about a 3-day honeymoon, and then did you drive straight all the way back to Chicago?
We
then? You
took the
stopped
train to
would you-
Chicago
Train.
From where?
from Dubuque.
So you came back to Dubuque and then took the train.
Uh-huh. We got into Chicago, and at the Union Station, and we took a bus to the Greenbergs.
With all of our luggage.
No, it was a trolley, wasn't it? It was a
Yes,
it was a,
yes,
a trolley car.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had we only had about two or three suitcases.
Oh, and that driver was so mad at us, Hicks, coming in here on this stuff, and we didn't have change. You're supposed to have exact change.
Well, and then we had to walk with all our luggage to the house where we were going to be living. Several blocks, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. I wonder why we didn't make arrangements for him to pick us up.
I don't know.
He would have done it. But anyhow.
Well, anyhow, then we got to the Greenbergs, and I arranged with Al Greenberg to drop me off at school each day in the morning. He worked for the National Retail Magazine, Furniture Magazine,
Out of the mart,
Furniture Mart.
merchandise mart in Chicago.
And so he dropped me off at Loyola on the way to work, and then I took the elevated back home each evening.
Now, how was this set up to stay at the Greenbergs? Did somebody
Through
know?
Loyola.
Yeah.
See, I applied when I got into Loyola. I guess I wrote
We
to
wrote.
wrote to
I
the-
think I have a copy of the letters.
we wrote to the woman who was in charge of student housing, and she rounded up this job for us. And so, we were all set.
So this was, I mean, because you took care of the kids, right? This is a job slash a place to live.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. There were 4 kids and a boxer dog, and lovely, lovely people, just grand. The man's name was Alan, her name was Etta, and she knew less about keeping house and cooking than I did. But she was the boss, so that's where I learned to cook.
How did you get, I know this is through the school, but so they were willing to send a young married couple that had no kids, no real, just been married, to go take care of a family? Were they?
Well, it was up to the family to decide whether they would accept it.
They had contacted Loyola looking for a student, probably hoping to get a single student.
And the thing is, the person who we replaced was an elderly woman, who was well equipped to do the job, although she was probably pretty old to be handling 4 kids.
Yeah.
But
She was tired.
her name was Myers. And
We think that was her last name, but that's the only name we ever knew was Myers.
So you start out your life, you've been married for 6 days, and now you've got 4 kids and a dog.
And a dog. And an inept housewife who leaned on me for everything.
Now, was she home all the time?
Yes, yeah.
But she still wanted somebody there to take care of her kids.
I don't know what the thing was. I don't know what it was with her.
Were they pretty wealthy and
Um,
that type of thing?
he was
He was well-to-do.
He was I mean,
He had a great job.
adequate.
Yeah. And had a beautiful house. They had furniture. First time I've ever seen chaise lounge, which was perpetually covered with plastic in order to keep it looking nice. But see, he at the furniture mart, he could see all these pieces of furniture, and I think they got great bargains on them. And
He didn't buy anything retail.
oh no. And when I got pregnant and we told them, they said, well, we know a doctor that'll do it for you wholesale. I said to them, not a kid wholesale, no. But they were really sweet.
So you're at the how long were you at the Greenbergs then?
About a year.
And how long were you married before you were pregnant?
I remember when you
14.
came down to Lewis Towers to tell me that you were pregnant.
You mean you didn't guess? No.
Well,
We had been married 14 months when Will was born, so that would have been, we were married 3 months before I got pregnant.
And was that, don't get into too many details here, but was that planned at all, or?
Oh, all of the children were planned, Sam.
Okay. That's not a good question. I mean, obviously you were, what?
No, we had figured to
Will was
wait
lucky
till
to
you were
see-
through
Yeah,
school.
we really
We thought
hadn't
we'd
planned
wait
on
till
having
he
a
was
child
through
that
school.
soon.
Until you were done with
Yeah.
school. But, what was that like? How big of a shock was that then? I mean,
Well, it was one of those things that happened.
You know, in our generation, you just,
that's part of life.
well, sure. And you were delighted. I mean, I was 25 by that time. And Dad didn't, well, I never had taken care of any children. I had never been a babysitter for babies, or really for anybody. I hadn't the patience for it. But I had had good experience because the Greenberg kids, let's see, I'm trying to think how old they were. The twins were 4, so Barb was 6, so Butch was 8 then.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been it. And the parents didn't want to discipline them because they were afraid they wouldn't like them. And I had come from managing the boys department where I had, 200 or 300 boys, and I had learned to crack the whip, and I was not going to stay there and have these kids boss me around,
You little petite Mary Whitehead, Mary Stevenson, I guess?
Well, yeah, but they were,
This
I
was
mean,
before-
they weren't big,
Well,
great
even-
big
even-
kids.
Even this teen thing you were in charge of, or was that more of a, that was more a social thing, I guess, where,
Yes, yeah,
I don't get, we'll talk about that
Yeah,
in the interview.
right.
But the Greenbergs were gonna let you stay there with the baby too, or was that?
Well,
Originally,
they
Etta wanted us to
see,
stay.
the thing is, they had this one room, period. And there really wasn't room for us and the baby.
But
And,
Etta said to Al, why, we can fix up the attic. She didn't want to lose me.
But then we went back to the housing people at Loyola, and they had come up with this couple in Ravinia, which is near Highland Park, and they had a garage apartment, which they would give to us in return for services. So that's what we did.
And of course, they didn't expect full-time service. Although when we left and they wanted someone else to come in, the gal at Loyola mildly criticized us because she said there's nobody that's going to go in and do what you did at either place because they wanted too much for what they were offering. And I said, well, you know, it fit our needs. It was great. But the one thing with the Lastmans in Ravinia was that if I wanted time off, I had to ask her for it and plan ahead, which meant that actually she had me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even though I didn't work that much. But
You're basically on call.
yes. Whereas at the Greenbergs, I had every other Sunday off and every Thursday off. But I usually would get breakfast for the kids on Thursday before I took off, and then I had to leave. If I had been there, I would have been working all day.
And this is the Lastmans, you said?
No, this was the Greenbergs. At the Lastmans, after Willie came, I couldn't get away anyway, you know, so it was fine.
Was the Lastmans a place where you had to walk through the dog kennel to get
Yes.
the stairwell?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there were side steps on the garage up to our apartment, and there was a big fence built around, and you had to go through the gate in order to get up to the steps. Well, this big boxer dog, name was Sinbad, and I had just bought a new top coat, and that dog jumped up on me and tore a hole in the back of it. And you know, here I was a student, I was making $105 a month, and I didn't appreciate it.
Well, when we moved there, Sinbad was not there. They had a little Manchester. You know what a Manchester looks like? A little black,
Kind of like a Chihuahua.
like a Chihuahua, only black, and more like a terrier than a pug. And some friends of theirs had no place to put, they had this dog in an apartment, this Sinbad. And so Al said, well, he'd take him. And the only place was where they had this sort of cage in the back.
Well, it was a nice dog. But
Oh, it was a
just,
wonderful
just
dog.
playful. I mean, that's
And the problem was they thought, because they had an acre of yard there, but
which I mowed.
which Dad mowed, yeah. But you had to. They paid no attention to the dog, and what was Mr. Lastman's first name?
Paul.
Paul had no time for the dog, so he would just lock him in. Now you know that dog was as big as your dog. Oh, and
bigger.
Bigger, but I mean about the same dimensions this way, and he was in a cage for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and he went
Except when you
nuts.
guys walked through.
Yeah, and he really went crazy. They finally just let him run, and I think someone killed him. I'm not sure. It seemed to me they
I
did.
don't know. They brought in a psychiatrist, but it didn't help.
Maybe that's what we should try. So how long did you live at the Lastmans?
A year and a half, was it?
About that.
Yeah.
And Will was born about 2 months after you got to the Lastmans?
No, no, because we left in order to be there for the summer. We left the Greenbergs.
Yeah.
I think we went there in June, Dad.
I don't remember.
Something like that.
And what, I don't know Will's birthday.
The 1st of
October 1st.
October.
October 1st,
Yeah.
okay.
So you see, that was quite a length of
And
time.
where was he born? Just
In
hospital
in
Saint-
Chicago.
St. Joseph's Hospital.
In Chicago, which was downtown.
And how long were you in the hospital for that?
5 days,
That was standard?
yes.
5 days.
Well, and Willie was born breech.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Oh, boy. And your first child in breech.
Yeah.
So was that well, obviously it was scary to begin with, but was that even scarier? I don't,
It was just, it was on a rainy night, and they had one nurse there, and there were 7 women that were in the process of delivering.
Wow.
And so we didn't get a lot of attention. But the only thing with the breech is that you know what an episiotomy is. Well, that cut is longer, so it's more uncomfortable getting over it. But I don't know that it was any harder than a
You didn't-
regular.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Or-
since that was your first child, you didn't know you
What
didn't
to
know
expect.
what to expect
Right.
anyway, so.
Yes.
I mean, that makes it easier. Being a man, I can say that, I guess.
Yeah.
And what were you doing during labor? I mean, this is pre-Lamaze, so you
Well,
were in
this
the
is
waiting
an
room?
interesting story.
Oh, well, let's hear it.
Well, before Willie was born, while we were still at the Greenbergs, I invested in an automobile. And it took her savings and my savings to do it, but I bought a Crosley. It's a small, very small car. And it was a station wagon. At any rate, I started driving that to and from school when we were in Ravinia. And at that time, I was back in undergraduate school because I had dropped out of law school, figuring I needed to work.
Well, you needed to get a degree on the GI Bill.
Yeah, I needed
and he'd
to
have run out of time.
I didn't want to run out of GI time, and
Yeah.
so I figured, well, what if I'd flunk out of law school?
And a lot of them were.
Well,
it
yeah,
was
we
very
had
tough.
we had 105 in our freshman class, and 47 made it.
Wow.
I made it in the lower echelon, but I made it. And so at any rate, we had this car, and I was in undergraduate school now. At Loyola, all the students must go to chapel Friday mornings. And if you miss 3 times, you're expelled automatically. So that one time prior to Willie's birth, I had a flat tire going in. It was late, couldn't get to chapel on time. There's one demerit. So you might know that Will would be born about the time that you needed to be in chapel. So I missed chapel again that day. I've got 2 demerits. So I went in to see the dean, and he wouldn't excuse the first one, the flat tire, but he did excuse the birth. So I've only got 1 demerit now. But at any rate, that's where I was.
So you were actually at chapel or like on your way to
I
chapel?
was on my,
What happened? I mean, how did you find out she was in labor?
oh, no,
We went in early.
I took her in.
Yeah.
Okay, but you knew it was Friday morning, it just happened that day.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you see, at that time, all he could have done was to have sat in the waiting room.
Right.
And that's
So you wouldn't
ridiculous.
even be allowed in
No.
No. So that was a waste of time. And they were angry with me because they were almost breaking a record for babies in 1 month, and I would not have that baby in September. And they were there was some young intern, and he'd come in and
You actually went into the hospital on the last day of September.
Yes.
And he was born the next morning.
yes, yeah, early in the morning. It was funny.
So then did you pass out stogies
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
in the
Yeah.
waiting room? Or?
Yeah.
No, not in the waiting room, I don't think.
No,
you did.
at school.
At school, yeah.
So you got 1 under your belt then, 12 more to go. And we should kind of change subject a little bit. Did you, I've asked you this before, plan on having a big family? Or was that,
Yes, we did. We actually did.
you had talked about it and,
Well, tell him about the movie.
Well, Cheaper by the Dozen.
That was
Was
one
it-
of our favorite
That
movies.
was one of our favorite movies, and we actually, and I think honestly, figured on a dozen.
The only problem being at that time, we were so naive, we didn't know how much trouble they were, So it was kind of funny because
was this something you had decided even before you were married or like
I think
first
so,
year you
yeah.
were married?
oh yeah, that was an era of big families.
Yeah, we
you
talked
know.
about having a big family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but a big family, is 5 or 6.
Well, it's still, always seemed kind of weird to me that, I mean, you have 2 sisters and you have 1 brother and then you decided both that you wanted a big family.
Yeah. But it was not frowned on, you know. Whereas all of a sudden, then you've got population people that are saying, well, we're going to flood the, so that then you went through a period later on where, you know, oh yeah, you know, so, which is nobody's business anyway. But it was,
Well, I take ribbing quite a bit.
yeah,
You mentioned 13 kids. Oh, you must be Catholic.
yes, or Mormon.
I mean, but that had nothing to, you know, I mean, that's a little joke too, but that
Yeah.
really had nothing to do with why you wanted to have a big family. Or probably had something to do with why you
No.
wanted to have a big family, but,
Well, we don't believe in abortion, for one thing.
right.
Um,
But anyway,
But you, so.
it was a challenge, Sam. You
Well,
know your mother, she always is up for
quite a challenge,
challenges.
And you know, by all means, I thank you for having 13 kids.
Yeah, 'cause you wouldn't be here.
12 wouldn't have been very good. So you've got one kid, and I'm kind of getting a little more in depth than I thought I was. Well, this is good enough. We can probably sit down and do this about 3 or 4 more times. I'm gonna probably stop about 3:30 since
Yeah.
I'm just gonna want to get going.
Yeah, I
But,
gotta get to church.
well, then when Steve was on the way, we were going to have to get out of Ravinia. So
Because you wouldn't have room. Was
We
that-
would have had room, but
she
you
wouldn't
know,
have
it
been
was,
able to do anything.
no, for them,
for them.
see, and that's what they need. Well, I don't think they replaced us, did they?
I don't know.
No.
But we moved in with Aunt Lillian on the South Shore. And I don't know how that came about.
Well, first of all, I went out to Dubuque, and Mom was going to watch Willie when Steve was born, because that was still, you stayed five days, you know. And so I wound up, because Grandpa went into his final decline. That was Mom's dad, who lived with us, who lived with her, at just about the time that I came home with the baby, Steve. And so I wound up helping Mom instead of Mom helping me. But you know, that's all right. That was fine. But it
That's all-
was,
I mean, that's what you were used to.
yeah. The
Nothing
only
was
thing is that
easy.
the mindset is, and you run into it all the time now, because I see it with your brothers and sisters and so forth, and that is that this is an impossible job for one person to do. You know, so you have to have help. So your mother comes in, or your mother-in-law comes in, or a sister, or something like that. So that then when you think you've got it all planned and it doesn't work out, then you're really ticked off. And here I was, we had moved out to Mom's in October. I think it was October, because I was still, because Steve was due in December. It was something like that. Anyhow, we had been there, and Mom had. Do you remember the old attic at Mom and Pop's house? Well, it was a decent enough room, but the attic part that you went through to get to the room had bats in it. So,
Well,
but
you're used to a big dog, though. That should have been a piece of cake.
yeah, but bats, you know. But anyway, so Willie and I stayed up there, and he was used to going to bed at between 9 and 10, because if he went to bed earlier, he'd never see his dad. So when we got home, Mom said, well, the first thing we're going to settle is that he's going to bed at 6 o'clock. And I said, well, I don't know that that's going to work, Mom. And she said, well, it's just foolish of us to give up our evenings for this little kid who could go to bed earlier. 2 days he was going to bed at 6, getting up at 6, you know, which is fine. And this is the nice thing about running into somebody who sets more limits than you did. And so he and Grandpa had a great time. Grandpa said, he said, and Willie would have been a year then when we went out there. And Grandpa said, that kid isn't afraid of the devil.
And things haven't changed too much.
No. But it was a nice experience. It was hard on Dad because he was living at the Lawson Y in Chicago, you know.
So you stayed in Chicago because you're still going to school.
Still
Right.
going to school and working.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you came, let me get this whole straight out. You came back to Dubuque because Mom was gonna take care of Will and help you out after you had Steve.
Yeah.
So Steve was born in Dubuque.
Yes.
You stayed in Chicago, and so what is the plan now? Were you gonna go back to Chicago, or were you gonna finish and come back to Dubuque?
No.
They were coming back to Chicago.
Come back to Chicago.
Well, then Aunt Lillian had decided to go to Europe and offered to let us stay in her apartment.
All right.
You know.
And I was at the Y. Prior to that, however, I was looking for apartments in Chicago, and I found one, and I put a down payment on it. And Arnie Jurassic, who was a friend of mine who I had gone to school with at Loyola, went over with me to bring my first load of belongings over there. And he looked the place over in the area, and he said, "You're not living here." So I just waived my down payment and forgot about it, and then we decided to go to Aunt Lillian.
So it was kind of just a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
You didn't know that was a bad neighborhood
No.
before. and then
See, Arnie was
You weren't from Chicago.
No,
Arnie was from Chicago.
and he was very canny about
Oh, yeah.
everything.
So
Yeah.
that helps having a
Yeah.
buddy like that.
Yeah. And then it was really sweet of Aunt Lillian to offer this, but she wound up not going.
So she was there.
So she was
With us.
there, and she was going into her, she had, one year she'd be depressed, and the next year she'd be manic. And so she made plans to go to Europe when she was manic, and then the depression came on, so we got out as soon as,
You didn't stay there too long.
Well, we stayed there till Dad graduated.
Yeah.
So
And
you've been
we
going
just
for
got
8
along
years,
with
so-
each other, because we didn't want a big mix-up or anything.
Well, was that did Aunt Lillian have the same view of you that Mom did?
Well,
Mother's
she didn't
mom?
like men, period.
Right,
Ah.
and she was the first to admit it, that she didn't. She said the
So
only,
I had another strike.
poor Dad.
Catholic and a man.
Well, I don't think Aunt Lillian minded the Catholic part of it. I don't think that bothered her at all.
But I think it bothered her having us there
Oh, it did.
because,
But she had offered, she had,
oh yes.
See, but that doesn't matter. You offer out of the kindness of your heart, and then you're stuck. See, so.
so you stayed there for about half a year or so?
Well, when you graduated in the fall, didn't you, Dad?
No, in June.
Oh, you graduated in June. Okay. And then we came back to Mom's, all of us, for about 3 weeks.
And
And,
now you're done with school.
Yep.
and I have a job at Zentner's in
Right.
Dubuque.
What was that? Yours?
Sporting goods
Sporting
company.
goods. It's not there
So
anymore.
was this always in your plan that you were eventually gonna come back to Dubuque? and
Yeah,
live there,
oh,
or just-
well, at least I had applied. I applied at Deere
Okay.
and at Zentner's.
Yeah.
And Deere didn't have any openings.
But they told him they'd call him, so he knew they were interested in him.
So I started at Zentner's in September, and I was selling in the store and delivering and that sort of thing. It was a family operation, and no real authority. I mean, you took orders from everybody in the family.
Because they were all related and you weren't.
So at any rate, the Christmas season was a busy season for them, and I had a call in December from Deere. They wanted me to come out and apply and interview, and I said, well, I've got to stay here through the Christmas season because they depend on me. So he said fine. So he says come out on the 16th of January, which I did. That was in 1952, and it started on that day.
You went for the interview and started working that day.
Well, I had interviewed previously.
Okay.
This was really
But did you know you were gonna be working that day when you went out there?
yes, I did.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. But it was kind of like a finalizing the job.
Yeah, they knew what I was capable of doing. They knew my background. They had my resume and everything, and so really it was just a matter of a final interview and starting.
What do you think you would have done if Deere would have said, well, we can't wait until after the Christmas season. You either need to come in now or you're not gonna be able to come in.
Well, I don't know because it didn't happen. So
Just wondering.
yeah. Well, see,
Well-
what happened was they were planning, Deere was planning on firing a guy. And they didn't want me there while he was still there.
So it actually worked out
It
better.
worked fine for both of us.
That's interesting. And you started, what was your first, we'll get into this more when I talk to you.
Well, I was in purchasing, and I was a clerk.
You were a clerk, okay.
Then I went from there to assistant buyer to supervisor and so forth.
Gradually just moved your way up. So what I was wondering before, I guess, is before even, when you went off to Loyola, were you planning, when you got your law degree, I mean, that was your original goal, were you gonna come back and be a lawyer in Dubuque?
I hadn't
No, you hadn't
I
planned
hadn't
that
made
far,
any decisions at all.
but you wanted to be a lawyer.
I wanted to get a law degree, not necessarily to practice law, because a law degree is a good degree no matter what you're going to do.
I think you were more business oriented, weren't
I
you?
believe so. Yeah. So I really don't know. I enjoyed law school, but it was a tough.
It was killer.
It was a tough grind.
Well, especially with the wife and the kid and.
Yeah. And I would stay up with him when he was studying for tests. And only time in my life I ever fell asleep talking. Still can't believe it.
So you're back in Dubuque, let's talk a little bit more here. So you started at Deere now, and where are you living now?
We got a little basement apartment on Garfield Avenue in Dubuque,
Which is on the North Flats.
with some people by the name of Tittle, and they had twin boys, and the mother, Katie, was kind of
Nuts.
nuts. And but at any rate, we lived there when John was born.
Okay.
And let's see now, John was born in February, and
February.
This is what, 50?
February 8th,
3?
50,
Or
oh, let's see, Willie was born in 49, Steve was
52.
born in 52.
yeah. So then after John was born, now we've got 3 kids in this little basement apartment, and so I went to my uncle George Holman and asked him to look around to see if there was any property available.
Was he in real estate?
Real estate, yes.
Real estate and insurance.
And so we looked at a couple of places, and this little place we finally bought was out in Center Grove, a little house, had a well, had an outhouse, and it had a roof that needed replacement.
You think you had it bad.
So we bought this place for $5,200.
Had a half an acre yard.
And I paid George Holman $50 a month against the mortgage.
So you put down 5,200?
No, we put down
overall
we
5,200.
we put down a down payment.
Right.
I don't remember
can't
what
remember.
that was.
5%.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And
Probably whatever you had. You probably
Yeah.
didn't have that much money saved at that
No,
point, did you?
whatever it was, it wiped us out. We didn't
Oh,
have
yeah.
money.
and
But see, and then Uncle George carried the
mortgage.
The mortgage.
So the first thing we did was to level the outhouse and put in a stool and a lavatory in one of the bedrooms. Well, previously was a bedroom.
How many bedrooms did this house have when you bought
2.
it?
It had
It
two.
was listed as a 2-bedroom house?
Yeah, and then it had a
A closed-in porch.
closed-in porch.
But it was dinky, it was small.
Oh, very small, yeah. It had no furnace. It had an oil burner that these former owners had spread asbestos around to make it look like a furnace. And
Had no blower on
it
it.
had no blower. There was a grate right above it in the middle of the house. That was the heat
So it
that
was
we had.
gravity, it was supposed to go up through that vent.
Yeah.
So did they put this asbestos around like before they tried to sell it to make it look like?
Well,
it was a
that's just the
furnace?
way it was.
That's the
when
way
we were
they-
there. Oh no,
no, see,
we
they-
knew it wasn't a
They
furnace.
used that way to keep the heat inside instead of escaping into the basement.
Right.
Right.
Whatever heat it generated went up.
how difficult a decision was this for you? I mean, did you throw all the money you had into this house when it wasn't the nicest house in the world?
Oh, no, it was, that,
Well,
you know, that's the
It was still
thing.
your own
But it
place.
was
Yeah.
one of the greatest feelings in the world
Yeah,
to own your own home.
yeah.
And we
And
had
have
about
that land.
we had 3/4 of an acre.
We had raspberry bushes in the back. We had all this space. Pop came out and did gardens for us. We had wonderful gardens there. And we had a cherry tree. And gosh, that one year we had so many cherries, I went around and begged, picked them and went and begged the neighbors to take them, you know. It was a wonderful place to live. And you see, Dad's mom and Dad never had a really nice house until when you were in the service.
Yeah. Well, they never owned a house before that.
That's right. And of course, we had lived in decent houses. We lived with Grandma and Grandpa in what at one time was a palatial place and was a wreck now. But when we went to Fort Dodge, when I was a sophomore in high school, Dad had just gotten out of the hospital after one of his manic depressions. And we had the upstairs of a house that had a living room, a kitchen, and one bedroom. And the bathroom we were supposed to share with the lady down, you know, the landlady. And I don't know when she ever used it, so she must have had a stool in the basement. I don't know. But anyway, I slept in the living room on a pull-out couch. And we lived there for 3 years. So, you know, to be cramped in something that wasn't perfect, it wasn't unusual for us, was it, Dad, for either one of us?
Did you, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I think that, you know, I remember I said to Willie when they were talking about buying a house, I said, well, you're so handy at things, why don't you buy a fix-up? You know, fix it up, sell it, and no. So many of your brothers and sisters had a house as nice as we have now when they started out, because that's what they wanted.
Well, and that's what, you know, it's like you said, that's what they're used to.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well-
we used to grow up in a nice house, and it's not even that, I mean, obviously we want that, but I shouldn't be talking. But we're used to that, and that's what we expect. And we expect to be able to have it as good as you guys have it now, which makes no sense. I have finally understood that.
Right, yeah. Well, I think after you pay bills for a while, you begin to understand it, you know.
But, so what year was this then, that you moved into the house in Centerville?
It was August of '52.
So it was 52, so you've got.
John was born in
you've got 3 kids
February.
now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. August of '52, and you immediately start fixing it. I mean,
Yeah, the next thing we did was to put a new roof on.
now where are you getting the money for all this? If you spent all your money on the down payment,
Well-
I was starting to make a halfway
He was
decent
making
salary.
good money.
you're working at Deer now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But still, I mean,
I don't,
Well, you know,
I don't
we-
know,
we-
we just,
we
We
how
lived
did
from
we do
paycheck
it?
to paycheck.
Yes, we did.
And in fact, for many years, we lived on an escrow. we had, they were going to blacktop the street along our house
And put in curb and gutter.
and put in curb and gutter, and I had to pay $182. So here's this $182 in escrow because they never got around to doing the road, so they never drew on my $182, and we lived
Yeah.
on that for years.
That kept us from being in the red at the end of the month. And
what,
then,
what would have happened if they would have went ahead and paid for that?
I don't know,
Well,
we'd
I
probably,
don't know.
the only thing that we did have a problem with was the pump in the basement went out. And so we pulled it, or the mechanism, the engine that ran the pump. We took it into, what was the name of that?
Red Jacket?
No, it wasn't Red Jacket. It was a local one there in Dubuque. And we took it down there to have it redone. And I think that was $75 maybe. And I think your dad lent that to us.
Oh, did he?
I think so. I'm not sure, but I think he
Well,
did.
he also lent me $1,100 to trade in my car because
It's the
the
Crosley
Crosley.
still?
Well, and that's an interesting story.
And I have to go to, I have
Yes.
to go.
Let's tell the story and then we'll.
It's,
Yeah,
it's a
okay.
very short story. I had asked Dad to look around in Dyersville, see if he could find a halfway decent car for me because the Crosley was starting to cause me problems. So he found a car, and Willie and I and his little blue blanket left Dubuque for Dyersville on a wintry day. He had a snowsuit on, as I recall, and we got to Epworth, and the ignition wires started to burn. And so I took the little blue blanket and put out the fire with the blue
So your
blanket.
engine's on fire.
Yes.
Not well, the
Ignition
The
wires-
cords.
ignition
The
wires
ignition wires.
underneath the dash, you know.
So this is like at your feet.
No,
Or
no, right below the steering wheel,
Okay.
underneath the instrument panel. So at any rate, I put out the fire, but the car wouldn't work. It was over on the side of the road. And fortunately, this happened very near an uncle of mine, Bill Kirby, who had a farmhouse, had a farm, and the house was close to the road. So Willie and I walked up to the house and called my dad in Dyersville and told him what happened. And he came to Epworth with his car and pushed my car with his all the way to Dyersville. That's about 11 miles. And so pushed me down to Sherman's garage where I was buying this car, and they rolled it in, and they took it.
And that was your trade-in.
And that was his trade.
Well, see, they wanted to use it to go on fishing trips.
Because it was a little station wagon. It was
Yeah.
awfully small, but it was built like that.
So at any rate, that's that story.
And poor Willie was without his blue blanket,
Yeah.
which was
So
green.
Will, like four years old?
Oh,
or something?
no.
He was
no.
probably 2,
Yeah.
Well, you said Will was born 49 though.
49, yeah.
Yes.
He bought the house,
Oh,
well, 50, he was close
Three.
to 3.
Oh, he's about 4.
Could he have been that
He
old?
must have been. Yeah.
At least
I
3.
don't know.
But, so then you got, what car did you get then?
I got a 47 Pontiac. And
And you know, when you buy secondhand cars all the time, there always things go wrong with them, you know. So the great joy was when we got our first new car, and when was that?
that was a Greenbrier.
Was that the Greenbrier bus? And I can't remember
That was
what year that was.
bought that van?
That was a
Yeah, the
van that
first
had
van.
a rear end engine, air cooled.
Yeah.
It served the purpose, but I didn't keep it very long.
No.
I think I maybe had 45,000 miles on
Yeah.
it.
But you know, when we talk about things like this, and when I go back to think about them, you know, they always, in our faith, you always say, well, if it's impossible, you just turn it over to the Lord. The Lord carried us forever.
He's still carrying it.
He's still carrying us.
I'll be going to turn it off now.
But it was real.